Get on board, get on track, get to where you're going. And now, your Edutrainer National Insurance columnist, Steve Savant.
Well, welcome everyone. I'm Steve Savant, your Edutrainer and coach for our entry-level series into life insurance. And all this week we're doing our series called The Essentials of Life Insurance. In today's show, we're focusing strictly and upfront on policy review. Remember, we're brought to you by Lincoln Benefit Life, an Allstate company, and one of the unique things we chose about Lincoln Benefit is their software. And we have up there their software site where we want you to go ahead to www.lblsales.com/ETW. When you come to the site, you'll see Run Installer, you'll click on it, download their software, because in about a week now we're going to be using their software. We want you to be prepared so that you can go page for page for us. One of the reasons we chose Lincoln Benefit Life software, it is the most user-friendly software that's out on the street today, and it's really great, and it gives us ability to teach you some of the basics of life insurance proposals and some of the cool stuff that they have on their software. You'll really appreciate it. That's why we so encourage you, download the software, have it ready to go. For about a week from now, we're going to start using their software live so that you can put it on your laptop and look side by side with me, and we can learn together. Also, any of the programs you ever see in our show, let's say you see documents that we do or anything else, and most of the documents and materials and handouts that we have are all available. All you have to do is write me at thebiz@brokersalliance.com. And we're giving away still our life insurance manual, and you can order that. Just say, Steve, I want your life insurance manual, or if you see anything this week on it, I want that specific doc, go ahead and send it. But if you'll go ahead and use thebiz@brokersalliance.com, that's THEBIZ@brokersalliance.com. We'll send you the life insurance manual and the life insurance vocabulary complete, and you'll really appreciate it. Well, let's get into it today. Today I'm going to be using more of the whiteboard, as we call it. And I really like the whiteboard because it has the ability not only to draw, and I can't draw, by the way, but I think you'll appreciate it. Today I'm doing policy review. Now, policy review is an art. And reviewing somebody else's life insurance policy, whether it's term or permanent or second to die, whether they bought it for income, indemnification, or inheritance, it really doesn't matter. I want to be able to policy review, and the first thing I want to know in a policy review was, what was the goal of the original purchase? That really helps me understand. Was it for indemnification? Was it for income? Or was it for some scenario that dealt with inheritance, like charitable giving or giving to children or grandchildren, paying estate taxes? Policy review. So the first thing I want to know is, I want to collect data. And the first one that's big, and it's a big one, is the existing policy. What the existing policy has for me is, I can look inside, I can see the date it was issued, I can see the amount, the premium commitment. It'll also, in the back of the policy, it'll have all the information from the original application, and part of that is the part 2. I'll get to that in a little bit. All that information is in the original policy. And remember, I've said this in a couple earlier classes. If you do take the client's policy, don't forget to use our receipt document. You say, Steve, I didn't see that show. You go back on our site and watch any of our shows, but you say, I'm going to do that. I'm going to actually collect a policy. Just go ahead and say, write me at thebiz@brokersalliance.com, and I'll send you the policy receipt doc, because if you're going to take the actual policy from a client, you need to give them a receipt for it so they know where it is and so forth. It's just good stewardship on your part to give them a receipt. First thing I want to see is the existing policy. Oh, by the way, it could be existing policies. It's really true. I've noticed that many clients have several policies, and on top of that, sometimes they have their domestic or their family policies, and if they're a business owner, they're going to have their business policies. When I'm reviewing it, I would like to review all of them because there are certain economies of scale. We might be able to get down to one policy on their family where it's one policy fee. We might actually be able to buy down the death benefit costs because some carriers actually give break points for death benefits, things of that nature. So if you get one policy, make sure to ask the client, did I see all your policies? And by the way, if you're going to ask for all the policies, Don't forget to ask for the spousal policies, the children's policies. Maybe perhaps they're older clients and they have grandchildren, and you may want to say, hey, are you the owner of these contracts that you have on your grandchildren? Maybe the parents are the beneficiary, maybe you're the insured, whatever, but do they have any policies? So whether it's you and your wife, your grandchildren, your grandparents, your parents, or you have a business relationship, I like to see all the policies. It kind of tells me what's been going on, how it was underwritten. I can kind of look at the part 2, which I'm going to get to in a moment. It really helps me. The second thing I need is the annual statement. The annual statement is kind of gives me an idea, the status, the update of the policy. It's going to have the end of the year statement, if it's got cash in it, if it's cash value policy. It's going to tell me everything about that contract that I need to know that's going on currently from the time that I actually got the existing policy or policies. So I want to be able to get the original annual statement. Almost everybody gets it mailed to them. Again, if you take that from the client and they don't have a copy, if you can make a copy and you're in your office, please do so. And the same thing with the policy, make a copy, but if you're not, leave a receipt for the document because they're going to need it for their files, whether you do or don't do business with them. The next thing I need, and it's kind of a critical, is the original, and this is a little harder because it's not always available, but a lot of policies actually include it now. I need the original proposal. I want to see the original proposal and how they illustrated the case. It's really interesting. If I only see the numbers pages, it doesn't really help me. I really like to see the entire proposal. It tells me everything that was done, especially the last page, because if we're dealing in any income scenarios, it'll actually tip me off to what the designer of the proposal did. And that last page tells me everything they did in the contract or in the illustration to make the numbers dance the way they dance. And so I really want to see the original proposal. And again, some of the contracts actually insert that with the policy on a delivery issue. The next thing I want to see is an in-force ledger. The in-force ledger is a great kissing cousin document to the annual statement. An in-force ledger is going to really help me because it's going to tell me the physical status of the policy at current company assumptions and will project based on what has happened and to that day that I order it, and based on current company practice, what's going to happen to the future based on all the conditions and the environment that's influencing that contract. So I love in-force ledgers. And so you want to be able to get an in-force ledger. You're going to have to ask the client to write a letter to the company. Most companies are pretty good about turning it around now. It's getting better because of technology. And you'll want to be able to see that in-force ledger, compare that with the annual statement. That is a huge issue. And what I like about the original ledger is you'll be able to compare what's the in-force to the original proposal. Those two side by side, and they're rarely the same. They're usually the in-force ledger, especially with declining rates in the last 20 years. The in-force ledger is generally lower than the original proposal numbers that we showed. But it's really good to get. The next thing I want to do is get, if possible, remember I'm reading the part 2. I told you about the part 2. I'll take the part 2 and I might be able to extrapolate off the part 2, which on the part 2 of an application is the medical. And the medical information, I might be able to get enough medical. I'd love to get the APS files if the client will go out and get it. Because remember, I'm not writing a case yet. I'm just reviewing their policy. And if I want to see any updates and I want to do a medical due diligence, I really need to look at the part 2, but I'd really rather have the APS from the physicians because that's going to give me more of an up-to-date, and I can see if I can really leverage the difference between one company and another and the way they treat certain conditions and certain health conditions. It's really a great thing to have. Part 2 is what I can use off the policy, but I'd rather have attending physician statements. Now, leave that up there for a second so you all have it. And remember, this is all on video, so you don't have to write too many copious notes. Now, why do I care about this? Because 65% of all reviews can change the concept or the original idea of the actual reason why I bought the policy in the first place. One of the biggest things, so 65% of everything we touch on a policy review is going to be rewritten. Here's one of the reasons why. First one, I can have a premium reduction. The market is changing all the time. Generally, it's so competitive that we see new players coming into the market, and I might be able to save my client money for doing this. I'm doing it because it directly impacts his cash flow. So the first thing I look at is premium reduction. The next thing I can do is, if I've really done a good job and the client needs the coverage, I might be able to increase the actual death benefit, which is excellent, because if indemnification or leverage in inheritance scenarios is really something, I want to be able to use or increase my death benefit. And so I can go to the next carrier, proviso that the client's insurable and all that. I'd be able to increase my death benefit. So that's another advantage of doing a review. The third thing that's really important is it could extend coverage. Maybe the cash values on the existing are really not enough to get past what the client thinks he's going to live, or as we call it, his life expectancy. Once I look at the 2001 CSO, I can kind of get an idea where we think the client's going to be, and if I see that or existing contract really not getting to that LE, or really not, the coverage is not going to make it there, doing a review may be able to extend the life of the coverage. And that is so important to me, because we want to make sure that whatever coverage we pick, that it's going to at least be about 5 years past what we predict or what we think is going to happen on his life expectancy. You can use the 2001 CSO, which you can order at thebiz@brokersalliance.com. Happy to send it to you. And then if you really want to have a good read, and this thing's about the size of a dictionary, you can go out to the Society of Actuaries website and pull down the 2008 VBT tables, the valuation-based tables. It's kind of big for this kind of a class, but if you're looking for something to see even more of how they measure relative risk, you could go out to their site and pick that off. Another thing that I like to see is, because we've been so conscious about contractual guarantees, really the things that are imperative inside these policy contracts, sometimes you can actually better the guarantees. Maybe the guarantees only go 20 years, but after you get done, guarantees, they may be able to do more than just the 20 years. You might be able to put it out to 35 to 40 years. And sometimes when we're looking at larger cases with older clients, I can usually improve the guarantees to get at least about 3 to 5 years past their life expectancy. Again, we're measuring things like this just to see, why are we doing the review? Because we might be able to reduce the premium. We might be able to increase the death benefit. We might be able to extend coverage. We might be able to do better guarantees. Now, some of the reasons why I might look at this is because certain medical technology has had tremendous advances, and certain carriers are experts at certain areas of health considerations, and so sometimes I'll look at it on that basis. Sometimes the carrier's ratings begin to decline, and the client becomes a little nervous about the carrier's claims paying ability or their financial stability. When that occurs, I want to be able to choose a company, a carrier that has really good ratings to put the client's mind at ease. So sometimes things happen. I also saw another carrier recently whose term portfolio used to go ahead and convert to their permanent line of product. But now their permanent line of product is at their guarantees, and so people became nervous that they wouldn't be able to convert their term to a quality product any longer, so they can take a punt position on that and say, let's go to a carrier that'll let me convert to a pretty good permanent policy for my term if I so desire to elect to do that. So those are my 4 things. I can reduce the premium, increase the death benefit, extend coverage, and better my guarantees on a contract. That's why I do policy reviews. The biggest issue, 65% of all policy reviews are put the client in one of these 4 better positions, and because of that, it's worth your while. I know several agents that all they do is they try to do reviews with not only their clients, but their referrals, and all they do is they go through all the things we just did, and it's a great revenue maker for them. Policy reviews, part of the essentials.
This has been an Edutrainment Workshop, the educational division of the National Insurance Clearinghouse, the marketing arm of Brokers Alliance, and sponsored by Lincoln Benefit Life, an Allstate company.